On a cool summer's evening in 1980, approximately 12 U.S. service members' lives were changed forever when they entered a distortion of space and time and witnessed the Beatles at Shea Stadium. How is this possible? Stick around to find out how 15 years after the Beatles rocked Shea Stadium, this happened. Find out now. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Matthew Street channel. I am your host, Matthew Street. And folks, the Beatles at Shea Stadium, August 15th, 1965, New York City / Queens / Flushing Meadows, whatever you want to say. History was made. Musical rock and roll history was made when 55,600 approximately people showed up to the largest open air show, rock show, up to that time for the Beatles at Shea Stadium. Folks, this was the highlight of their 1965 world tour. And what was even more special about it is a film was made by Ed Sullivan Productions. A 50-minute long documentary was made. 14 cameras captured the mass hysteria, the euphoria of this Beatles concert. Beatlemania in action. The time leading up to the show, the Beatles in their helicopter flying to the show from New York City proper. Scenes of the Beatles in the dressing room. The opening acts like Brenda Holloway, King Curtis, Sounds Incorporated, Joe Pirro and the Discotheque Dancers. That was great. And also, their other openers, from what I've learned, were the Young Rascals and Cannibal and the Headhunters, but they are not in the film. Also in attendance this evening was obviously Ed Sullivan. He was the host. He was the one who introduced the Beatles. Sid Bernstein, who was the promoter of the show. But you had Murray the K, who was up on stage. Jerry Weintraub. Neil Aspinall was there. Mal Evans. Brian Epstein. Cousin Brucey was also an announcer on stage. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. Bobby Vinton was backstage. Marvin Gaye. I mean, folks, this was star-studded. There could have been more. I just don't know them all. It's reported that Linda McCartney herself, Linda Eastman at the time, and Barbara Bach, I don't know her maiden name. What was her name? I don't know. Barbara Bach, maybe that was it. Now she's Barbara Starkey, whatever. She was there in the audience as well. And folks, a full-color 50-minute film came out on television in early 1966. Oh my goodness, folks, this was unbelievable. Now, you might be saying, Matt, what about the time travel? What about the 12 service members that were caught in the time warp and traveled to Shea Stadium? Well, listen on, folks, because in the 70s and early 80s, but definitely in the 1970s, companies would make 8mm films of different events, different movies, things you could get, all kinds of stuff, cartoons, live action, whatever, would come out on 8mm color sound films. Yes, they became available in the 70s. So what people would do is they would buy a projector, something like this, and they would get like a screen, a proper screen, or they would throw up a white sheet on a wall or whatever they had to do to flash large images before the days of 65-inch flat screen 4K TVs, folks. This was the days when if you could project something large on a wall or on a screen, that was a big deal because the televisions for the average person at the time were not that big. You know, they were not gigantic and the image on them was not the greatest. So they would get these 8mm films and project them on the big screen. Now, here's where the story picks up with the time warp. So, in 1980, on that cool summer's evening, I was a young service member, still a teenager, in the United Kingdom, overseas in the United States Air Force at an RAF base, which was a joint base with British forces and American Air Forces. And We lived in dormitories, okay? When I was this young serviceman, the young single guys, if you were married, you got off-base housing or on-base housing with your spouse. But if you were single, it was kind of like a college dorm or barracks setup, as it were. You lived in a dormitory, much like, the dormitories I'll probably show here up on my screen. And you lived in these dorms, and you worked 6 days straight, sometimes midnight shifts, evening shifts. You could be out on the flight line where the aircraft were. You could be in different, depending where you were assigned to work, all over the place. It was long hours. Sometimes it could be a 12-hour day with 12 hours off, 12 hours on, 12 hours off. But normally you work like a normal 8-hour shift, 6 days in a row, and then you got 3 days off. So your days off are always rotating. So obviously, luckily they had great facilities on these bases for working out, going to a gym, going to stores, the base exchange to buy things, products. If you've been in the service, what it's all about. They try to make it as homey as possible. We even had 2 record stores on my base where you could buy records and cassettes and whatnot. So folks, anyway, to keep the story rolling here, on this evening, all these guys who were in the dorm on one of our days off that worked in my flight, we called it flight. I was on C flight. There was A, B, C, and D flight. I was C flight, so we had our certain 3 days off. We had a particular dorm that was all our dorm. Well, me and my roommate, we were both the music buffs, the rock and roll buffs. He was into heavier music, got me into the heavier rock. I was into more of the power pop and the Beatles and the British Invasion and that stuff. So we melded together. We turned each other on to each other's music, but we were like rock and roll central in our dormitory. I mean, we messed around on guitars together. We rocked out to music together, and so did everyone else. Everyone else had their music they loved. But we were the rock and roll guys, okay? So one day I happened to be in the base library, okay? Just went in the library, maybe look at books of that, and I found out they had a film section in this library. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? Yes, you could go into this section, and they had 8mm color films of different things, shorts, longer films, cartoons, and I found a copy. I don't know how old it was when this thing was made, but this is summer of 1980, so it had to be prior to that because it looked like it was beat up a little bit, so definitely back into the 70s. A full color 8mm with sound copy of the Beatles live at Shea Stadium. Folks, I was knocked out. Knocked out. I couldn't believe it. So you could sign out the film like a library, sign it out to take it for a week or so, and I could sign out an 8mm sound projector, and I did it, folks. So the first time I did it many times subsequently, just so you know. This wasn't the only time, but the first time was the best, the most special. Signed it out, and I made a big event out of it. Me and my roommate planned a big event. We invited everybody from C Flight, anyone who wanted to come to our room. We were going to have a big screening night of the Beatles at Shea Stadium. We were going to have food. We were going to have drinks. I'm going to tell you all about it. So the night in question, we invited a bunch of people. We let everybody know who would be interested. And, these are young single guys that are looking for things to do. So if there's a party going on and maybe there's going to be some rock and roll, you're going to get bodies showing up because people are, we're thousands of miles away from home. We're homesick, young, American kids, looking to have some fun on our days off and a good time. You bet people are looking for something to do. So we set up a large sheet in our room. We took a white sheet. We took duct tape or masking tape, whatever. We hung up this large white sheet in the room, invited everybody, and folks, we had a full house. We had at least a dozen. I call it the dirty dozen, but there could have been more. I don't know. Our little dorm room was jam-packed. We had casual Beatles fans, people that, I like the Beatles. They might have had a couple of records. We had guys that were like, man, the Beatles, whatever. And then we had the hardcore fans. Remember, we're in the UK now. So a lot of people were excited about being in the UK where they could go visit Liverpool, London, and wherever. Beatle fans, hardcore Beatle fans. And folks, we laid out the spread at this party. And we told people, bring what you have. And they did. Folks, people showed up with food. We had chili dogs flowing. We had cake. People brought cakes. We had chips. We had pizzas galore. Beer, as much beer flowing like a beautiful river through our dormitory. Wine, champagne, soda. You name the soda, it was there. Coolers full of stuff, you name it, it was there. Set everything up. Had the food, had the drinks. The guys were there. People were tipping back the cold ones, okay? People are getting rambunctious now, and they're ready for some rock and roll by the Beatles, and you bet we delivered, because I said I was the camera guy, all right, a projectionist. You can call Matt Street. I was the projectionist, and my roommate, he was kind of like, the stereo connector guy. He hooked up the projector. We were able to get this, whatever, I can only remember what we had. I'll show you a facsimile of it here, what it kind of looked like. But he was able to wire the projector. So not only did the sound come out of the projector itself on the little speaker on the projector, but he had some wire set up going to the stereo in our room where the sound was coming out of our full stereo. And he had these Sherwin Vega speakers. Any of you buffs out there, sound buffs, must know Sherwin Vega. Okay, these things cranked, all right? So he had the projector hooked up to the stereo. I'm the projectionist. I'm working the projector, make sure, I forget how many reels Shea Stadium was. It was either 2 or 3 reels, so I had to change after so many, 20 minutes or so, I had to change a reel, something like that. So we put the film on, the food's ready, the stereo's ready, everyone's pumped up, excited, and it comes on. The Beatles at Shea Stadium. Folks, a nice, good print of it. It was pretty damn good. If I remember correctly, it was good. We were transfixed at first because this gigantic, 6 foot by 4 foot, image of the Beatles at Shea Stadium comes on, projected onto this large white sheet in our room hanging from the wall, and the hooting starts and the hollering and the cheering. I mean, through all the opening stuff, through all the opening acts, people were getting into it. Brenda Holloway up there dancing and the discotheque dancers and, these young males, overseas, away from home. And so when these dancing girls are coming on and then some of the cute fans that were shown in the audience, we're all teenagers ourselves, it was like, whoa. So people are hooting, people are hollering, people are cheering, people are, crank the volume, especially when the Beatles came on. Turn it up, cranking those Sherwin Vega speakers as loud as they could go. And we were amazed, and everyone was amazed and transfixed on the Beatles performing at Shea. Folks, for a brief moment in time, space and time stopped. Time travel was possible. For a moment, we were there, this large image on the screen, and we were screaming and yelling and hollering and drinking and eating and having fun, snacks, and rocking out, man. And for a brief moment, I swear, we were transported to Shea Stadium on August 15th, 1965 in Flushing Meadows, and we were there enjoying the Beatles in concert. It felt that way. Or maybe it was the alcohol doing it. I don't know. Whatever. But you know what I'm saying? No, seriously, folks, we were there. The casual fans, they were hardcore after that. They wanted to learn everything about the Beatles from me and my roommate and other hardcore fans that were there. They were going to be buying the albums, the UK albums we had easy access to over there. Folks, it was a night of glory. It was a night of absolute thrill and excitement. A night that anyone who's into the Beatles would remember forever. And to this day, me and my roommate, who I'm still in touch with after 40 plus years, still joke about that particular first night and how wonderful it was, and how for a moment in time, it was a moment we could never capture again. The excitement of the Beatles at Shea Stadium and all these guys crammed in our room enjoying it and partying and having a great time. It's something we'll never forget. Now, we did take out the film over the years, couple of years. I was assigned there over 2 years. And I was there at least another year and a half after we discovered the film in the library. We took it out several more times and had more little, gatherings and fun, but nothing was as good as the first time. You know what I'm saying? Like that first time that we experienced Shea Stadium in that manner, that was the best, although all the other times were great. Folks, it was a great night where 1980 and 1965 melded into glorious Beatlemania once again. Thank you all for being here. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and comment, and I would appreciate if you could subscribe to my channel. It helps its growth, and it really helps me bring more content like this to you. Thank you all for being here. Peace and love. Bye-bye.